Hi everyone, Tracy DW here. On the 7th of May 2025, India launched missile strikes on Pakistan in a military operation called Operation Sindoor. 4 days of intense fighting followed until both countries agreed to a ceasefire. It was the greatest escalation between the two countries in decades, and an uneasy truce now remains at the time of this podcast episode. The catalyst? The Pahalgan terrorist attack earlier on the 22nd of April that killed 25 Indian tourists in the region of Kashmir. The Resistance Front, a Pakistani terrorist organisation, claimed responsibility. However, this catalyst is rooted in an unresolved territorial dispute over a region claimed by both nations since the partition of British India in 1947. This historical divide and cross-border conflict between India and Pakistan has generated strategic narratives within and across the region of Jammu and Kashmir over the last 8 decades. There have been 3 wars relating to the conflict over Jammu and Kashmir. The first Kashmir War took place from 1947 to 48, with a ceasefire on the 1st of January 1949. 1965 saw the Second War, which was the result of the ongoing dispute from 1947 and Pakistan's claim to the area called Rann of Kutch, and in May to July 1999, the Kargil War, caused by Pakistan's infiltration and control of points along the line of India's border. Prior to 1815, Jammu and Kashmir was in the form of 22 independent states carved out of territories controlled by the Amir or King of Afghanistan and other local rulers. These became known collectively as the Punjab Hill states of the Rajput kings, vassal states of the Mughal Empire. After the decline of the Mughal Empire, the region fell under the rule of the Sikhs through Ranjit Singh. The First Anglo-Sikh War, 1845 to 46, saw the East India Company take control of the land between the Birs and Sutlej rivers. Since Ranjit Singh refused to pay the million rupees the East India Company demanded, the British Corporation encouraged Gulab Singh to acquire the region for just 3/4 of that amount, and with that, the Dogra ruler became the first Maharaja of the newly formed princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. This was the beginning of a dynasty which ruled the second largest state during the time of the British Raj until 1947, when the region was overlooked by a British lawyer who was given the onerous task of partitioning the old colony into 2 independent states. As Britain decided to withdraw from its rule as the British Raj after World War II, Lord Mountbatten, Viceroy of India, set the target date for independence for the 15th of August 1947. While leaders such as Mohandas Gandhi and India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru wanted a united India to include all faiths, others, such as the leader of the All India Muslim League, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, demanded a partition for a separate Muslim homeland as part of the independent settlement process. With 25% of the total population being Muslim, pre-independent maps in 1940 reveal proposals for borders by Chaudhry Ramat Ali, who took into account the areas across India with pockets of Muslim populations. However, these proposals were ignored by Cyril Radcliffe, who drew up the borders dividing British India using outdated maps and old census data based solely according to religious demographics. Radcliffe assumed the task to be straightforward enough and regarded it as a simple solution: a Hindu India versus a Muslim majority Pakistan to include both West and Eastern Pakistan, which was to become Bangladesh in 1971. The reality of Radcliffe's hasty partitioning, now referred to as the Radcliffe Line, caused the displacement of millions crossing the border, evoking violence and deaths on a mass scale. The Calcutta killings in 1946 saw Muslim militia and right-wing Indian groups oust each other out of villages that either side had claimed as newly acquired territory. But territories such as Jammu and Kashmir were overlooked by the Radcliffe Line. Is there hope for a peaceful solution? At present, India administers and controls half of the region, but this Indian-administered part of Kashmir is now 60% Muslim, making it the largest Muslim majority on Indian soil. A year later, after India and Pakistan's independence, 1948 saw another boundary line hastily drawn up, this time in the Middle East, creating another state formed solely on the basis of religion. We ask the same question here. Is there hope for a peaceful solution? We all have the right to coexist, but what is history actually teaching us from the conflicts, uncertainty and devastation that has resulted from this? Is there hope for a peaceful solution? Will the current ceasefire hold? At Modi's swearing-in ceremony in Delhi back in 2014 as the new Indian Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif, then Pakistan's PM, attended the ceremony. Despite wanting a hard-line rule across the border, Modi was interested in peace. However, a year later, these hopes were dashed when India blamed Pakistan for strikes on its airbase in Pathankot in Punjab. In response, Modi cancelled a visit to Pakistan's capital to Islamabad for a regional summit in 2017. And since then, there has been no progress on peace talks between the two neighbours. But is this an issue that both countries could come to an agreement without Western intervention? A barrier to brokering lasting peace is the fact that both India and Pakistan do not share any mutual allies in the traditional sense, but only share common interests with other nations through their bilateral tension. This means that there is no country willing to act as a mediator, and narratives continue to be perpetuated by terrorism, religion, and disputes over natural resources. While China has always been an economic partner with both India and Pakistan, Russia has more recently developed a strategic alliance with both countries. And the US also views India as an ally for defence in the Indo-China region, but due to their collaboration in the Soviet-Afghan War, also views Pakistan as a non-NATO ally. Should Britain have not been so careless? It's important to recognise that these princely states were not under British control and were given the option to join India, Pakistan, or remain neutral. Maybe Britain could have worked harder on the idea of unification through establishing regional states where Hindus and Muslims could coexist. But while Gandhi and Nehru envisaged a unification of all faiths from the centre, were they underestimating how a Muslim might live as a minority in that kind of country? After all, Jammu and Kashmir are not merely voids waiting to be occupied or conquered, but living, breathing entities that could exist as a nation in its own right. And should it be allowed to exist in its own right? Let's not have another situation where two countries have been fighting for so long that they have both lost track of the causes for their conflict. It needs to be more than just harbouring a deep primal hatred for one another. History teaches us that we need to define ourselves through what we all have in common, and not just our differences. If you liked this podcast, then stay on this listening platform, click the subscribe button, and check out my other episodes related to this one, such as The Pink Map Project, The Ultimate Paradox from the very first season, A Moment That Changed My Life from the second season, and Whose War Is It Anyway from the third. And you can also check out the podcast episode previous to this one, In Search of a Peace That Is Noble. And don't forget what I call the heart and soul of the Stories to be Told movement, my stories or poetic narratives, Caribbean Wind, Caribbean Rush, Nights at the Round Table, the Berlin Conference 1884, and Gone with the Wind, Macmillan's Speech for Change. These are all available on the website in paperback, on Amazon in Kindle format, and in ebook format at Apple Books and all other digital platforms. Also, the publication of the latest 4 titles. Now, if you want to find out more, just visit storiestobetold.com and check out the learning platforms for The Journey's End, Giving Back Hong Kong, Bite from the Big Apple, A Story for New York, Hope for Zimbabwe, Arise the Phoenix, and A Story for South Africa. If you'd like to sign up to my email list, just visit the website where you can opt in and receive your free samples of my first 4 titles. And finally, remember that you can also send me an audio message on the SpeakPipe link, which is also in the show notes, so don't be a stranger. Feel free to like, follow and share us on social media when you visit the website. Just click on to whichever social media link you would like to follow us on. And as always, it is a pleasure and a privilege to share my learning journey with you in this podcast series, and I encourage you to either begin or continue your own, as history is a matter of fact or perspective. I'm Tracy DW, and this is a Stories to be Told podcast. Stay safe, stay well, stay blessed. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next